Hi, everybody. Let's get this new experimental show started. Hello, and welcome to Ask a Channel. This is an experimental episode that I hope can become a regular series. If you enjoy your time here together today, please let me know if you'd like more in this series. For those of you who may not know me, I am Troy, a trance channel specializing in work with an entity known as Michael, first introduced to the public through messages from Michael. I am the creator, host, and resident channel for truthloveenergy.com, where my work with Michael is archived for study, validation, and cross-referencing. I've been channeling publicly since 1988. If you are unfamiliar with what channeling is and what the Michael teachings are, please go to truthloveenergy.com and learn more. For everybody else, I'm a 6th-level old servercast sage from Cadre 1, Entity 2, and my pronouns are he, they. A little backstory for why this series was created is that sometimes it dawns on me that I spend most of my time with the community while I'm in a trance. So I wanted to host a stream where I'm with you as Troy. So I'm here today to answer questions from you about anything you want to ask me regarding anything related to who I am, what I do, and how I do it. But I do have a disclaimer. All responses today are my own. I may paraphrase or reference or quote Michael, but everything shared in this episode is just me and my perspective, experiences, and insights. Most of my work with Michael is done while in trance, and I have a lot of catching up to do compared to most of the community who studies the teaching. As a channel, believe it or not, I'm more out of the loop than you would think. And with me today, to help take care of our lovely and wonderful viewers, is my boyfriend, my fiance, and everyone's Bobby. Welcome, Bobby, to the stream. Woo!
Hey, everybody.
Hey there, it's just me, you, and me today.
And Bumper.
And Bumper.
I can't point correctly, but
there you go.
Bumper.
We've got Bumper in the background. Ramona's over here too, but hopefully she stays there. It doesn't hurt me. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
For those of you who don't know me, I am Bobby. I am a 4th level old server cast artisan from C2E2 and Cadre 2 Entity 2. And my pronouns are he, him.
Yay! So, Bobby and everybody else, the way I'm going to have the show flow today is I'm going to start with some Q&A from the forum that's on truthloveenergy.com, where people can post questions in a designated area called Ask a Channel. And I haven't been paying attention to it for a long time, so I thought I would start there and give some responses to people who have been waiting a long time. It's been neglected for years. So what I'm going to do is start there, but then Bobby's going to grab your comments. So as I'm responding to these questions, you can all comment, and we'll put that up on the screen. And then we're going to take questions from all of you as well. So,
case in point. You're already getting a lot of love.
Oh, giddy. Hi, everybody. Let me see who's in here, because I'm not usually paying attention to the chat because I'm focused on running the show.
Well,
Virtual hugs.
Obviously, Rose says hi. Ollivander says hi, Troy.
Hi.
Kate.
Kate's here.
Pal Kate.
We got Mike.
Hey there, Mike. Cheryl's saying.
Young.
Hi, Cheryl.
Young's here. Cheryl's here. Amanda's here.
Amanda. Young. It's nice to see you.
Faye's here. Woo!
We got some Faye love in the house.
That's good.
Anne.
Anla.
Hi, Anne.
Wait, is that Ann H?
I think that's Ann H.
Yeah, I think it is. Anla is Ann H.
And we got Tom. Hey, Tom.
Oh, Tom's here. Good. All right. Oh,
and of course.
Look at Moonfeather's here too.
Moon.
I really didn't think anybody was going to show up. One of the reasons why I prepared some slides in advance is in case nobody showed up, and at least I'd have some footage.
You've got a lot of love.
So that's nice. Okay, so I want to also give an additional disclaimer that I have not prepared responses. Nothing after this is scripted. So I'm reading a lot of these questions for the first time with thought. I mean, I copied and pasted them to make these little slides, but I haven't thought about them or really read them carefully. So let's hope I have some good answers. So let's start with the first one, Bobby. We have my first slide here. This is a question that comes from Joanne. How can I call the MT model of essence personality to attract more people into that part of the teaching and without having to go into the esoteric mediumship aspects? So this question is very familiar to a lot of people who want to share the teachings with others, but not have to go into the whole, it's channeled, it's it's somebody goes into a trance and it's an entity like all of that just muddles the message that you want to get across. So I don't really have like a specific response to this, like something that I can tell you to do to make it more accessible, but I do recommend that you just talk to the person in the language they can hear. I think that's really important because you don't have to explain the background of everything that you're trying to convey. You can just share with them some insights. Like, there's a lot of ways, for instance, the attitudes are basically how a person looks at the world. So if you see somebody behaving or seeing the world in a certain way, you can give them insight and say, the way you're looking at the world sounds like this. And I have some insight about how to understand when you're looking at the world more negatively or restricted and how you can see it more in the positive. And so, little tactics like that can really work in getting the information to somebody who needs it without having to, recruit them into the teachings. So that's my suggestion. Speak to the person in their language and you'll find a way. You know the people you're talking to well enough to do that, I think. Yes. Intuitive. Any comments, Bobby, you want to put up? Of course we would show up. Oh, thanks, Cheryl.
Well, this is a new name I haven't seen.
Tyrone. You know Tyrone.
Do I know Tyrone?
Yes.
Hi, Tyrone. Well, Tyrone says yo.
Yo, Tyrone.
And Rose just likened the concept, just the intuitive flow of the show. Nothing too prescripted.
Right.
I did ask in the chat to go ahead. If y'all have any Michael Teachings questions, ask them here and maybe we can get to them.
Or not just Michael Teachings questions for me.
Right.
I'm here representing me too. All right, let's go into the next one. This may sound like a dumb question, but I was wondering if you do sessions for yourself with Michael. What I mean is, do you formally ever sit down with a list of your own questions to ask Michael? From Matt. The short answer is no. I'm too lazy. I'm just like you. I try to figure things out on my own first. No, in working with Michael over the years, I used to ask questions more often to get insights. And the more you work with Michael, at least in terms of like getting insights about your life, the more you feel this return to yourself as a confident resource. And so as I've worked with Michael over the years and asking questions, it always came back to me in the end. Like, what do you want to do? What's your choice? It's your choice that matters. And their information helped me make some choices and helped me understand choices. But ultimately, I ended up having to figure it out on my own. And I really, that's basically what I do now. I'll get some backup information or insight from Michael through other people's questions that may be relevant to my life and how I am experiencing things and need insight about. But I never sit down with a list of questions. There is sometimes that I want to do that, and I wish that I had my own channel that I could go to, and I haven't really looked for that, and I don't really have that. So I just still try to figure things out on my own.
Well, speaking of figuring your things out and balancing you with Michael, Rose asking, how do you balance your work, rest, and play as the highly creative channel that you are? You inspire me a lot.
Oh, thanks, Ro. I don't balance it very well. I prioritize play because
He does. He does.
Because there's I guess the way that I have learned to balance work, play, study, and rest is to first emphasize the part that I would most likely neglect, because I think that it's not something I can do until I do the other stuff. So for a long time, I used to be like, I can't have fun. I can't do anything that I like. I can't rest. I can't read these things or watch these things until I'm done with the work. And over the years, I learned that I can't function without play. The balance for me is the emphasis on play. I cannot function or get through catch up with myself without having that part of my day where I'm just allowed to play. And that can also include the work, because there are a lot of creative projects that I like to bring to the community and host and pull together like this. I consider this play. So it's still contributing to my work, but it's through the avenue of play. And so that's kind of how I find a balance, is I find a way for play to feed into everything else instead of other areas that I don't enjoy so much.
And isn't that in line with, wasn't Michael Channel once saying that sages are the children of the universe?
All right, that's true.
Oh, look,
Yes.
See, Rose says,
Our
our
sage
sage
babies.
babies need to play. See, y'all are a bunch of babies.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Cheers, everybody. I'm drinking blueberry rice beer from Korea.
Hey. I wanted to go back to the second question that when you were talking about, do you have your own channel and you don't? Tyrone just made a comment. He was saying, it's like the therapist having a therapist of their own kind of thing.
Right. It is like that.
Rose says, I so relate to that priority of play.
Yeah. I learned that it's not, if it gives me the energy to do the other stuff, it's definitely not neglecting. It's not an act of neglect to focus on play. That's where I get my energy.
Here's a great question from the group. Cheryl Varner asks, who taught you how to cook and prepare vegan meals? Any suggestions on how to start?
I became vegetarian in 8th grade. And as many of you know, I did not have a lovely upbringing. I did not have a mother who understood me in any way, shape, or form. So when I wanted to be vegetarian, she stopped cooking for me in 8th grade. So I had to learn how to cook on my own. So I know it sounds sad, but it also really helped me a lot because I love to cook. The pandemic has kind of ruined that a little bit, but most of my learning how to cook and what to cook and how to be creative in cooking was because I had to be, because I didn't have anybody preparing my meals anymore in 8th grade. So that was pretty early on. But over the years, I like to look to other vegan chefs, and then I sort of dumb it down for myself. Like Avant-Garde Vegan, I love what he brings. If you want to look him up, Avant-Garde Vegan has a great cookbook and great YouTube channel. And a lot of the stuff he cooks is really high end and might seem really complicated, but you can kind of like dumb it down. But there are a lot of vegan channels that are very accessible with great people cooking just everyday meals with really great ideas and quick ones. I highly recommend YouTube as your resource.
And I can vouch and say that Troy is a really great cook. He's very creative in ways that I never am in the kitchen. He can look at whatever we have available to us and figure out a way to conjure up some kind of lovely, tasty, hearty meal. But I would also say another great thing, especially as the science of vegan food continues to develop and expand and flourish, it makes more food options available in grocery stores. And so you have things like vegan cheeses and vegan bacons and vegan chickens. And so really, you have all the same vegan versions of other things you might have been familiar with prior. And so you can still make the same foods, just with you can make a BLT sandwich, right? But you can make it all vegan.
Yeah, everything can be veganized. As far as where to start, there are great starter kits, like from PETA or oh gosh, where's the head? I can't remember the name of it, but I'll put some links in the final post for this with some references for where to go for starting out if you're interested in being vegan. And Cheryl, if you are interested in being vegan and you're going to explore it, thank you so much.
Well,
on behalf of myself and the animals and the planet.
She says, thanks, Troy. I'm not vegan, but I do get meals from a couple of vegan restaurants is that
Chicago?
Chicago area, I'm assuming.
Chai.
So
well, still, every little bit counts. I appreciate it. Even exploring it, because the more you explore it, you're like, wait, what? I'm not missing out on anything.
Oh, listen to this. My granddaughter, Sachia, a 6th-level old server, also started to cook on her own at age 14.
Yeah. It's good.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to skip ahead too soon. I did want to circle back also. Tyrone was talking about your love of play or needing to integrate play. Also, being an old soul makes that extra fun emphasis.
Oh, I think you might be right. Old souls, yeah, definitely. We've been through a lot. So it's really good for us to have that downtime and creativity and the emphasis on play, because we've been through so much as old souls. I think that the more we manifest essence, the more we connect with that history. And a lot of people interpret that or feel it as an exhaustion. And I think that if we can allow that to be a part of our history, but also try to participate in the world in a more playful way with this power of choice that we have, and our sense of responsibility and participation and connection, and just using everything we've learned across all of our soul ages, it could really be fun. Not always, as the past few years have emphasized, but it can be fun.
Here's an interesting question. This is from Ro. How do you see or perceive Michael? How has this perception evolved through time?
When I first started channeling Michael, I would see them as or sense them as a group of people coming up from behind me, and then they would put this cape on my shoulders. And then I would know that I was grounded and receiving Michael in energy. Then it evolved to being this blue light that would just sort of be there and hover around me. And then it evolved to being not really anything in particular, but a feeling. And the only way I can describe the feeling is that feeling you get when you take a nap, when you were a kid and you took a nap while your parents had taken you to visit friends or something, and they're all still up playing cards or something, and you're in another room and you can hear voices and you can see light coming through the door, but you're sort of half asleep. There's something really comforting about that memory for me. And that's the feeling I would get when I would go into a trance and know Michael was there. It's oh, now Michael's here because I feel that comforting feeling. And it wasn't that they were providing that comforting feeling. It's just the way I interpreted it. And now I pretty much it's like a friend walking in the door, oh, they're here. And then I just go, wherever I go, I just know they're there and they're here. That's it. But I can share something that I haven't shared beyond a few people, that when I was in the Netherlands and I was dying in 2007, or at least they thought I was going to die, and I was struggling to survive pneumonia, there was this really strange experience I had that I've never had before, never had since. But I was asking Michael, like, am I going to live? Am I going to live? Because asking me if I've ever wanted to have a session with Michael. If I ever did, that was the one time. And they were like, oh yeah, you're going to live. This isn't an exit point for you. But I was like, how do you know this? Because that's, that was too close to prediction for me. And they said, we'd like to meet you. And I don't know how to explain this, but I was transported to this strange, like almost the color of this pink in the background, this hue of pink all around me. And then this membrane of like a pink membrane that I could see through, and people were on the other side of it. And then they started pushing on this this membrane, and it was thousands of people. It sounds so creepy, but it was beautiful to me. And all these hands were pressing up against it. And I didn't feel it as creepy or weird or whatever, but that was me meeting Michael while I was on my deathbed. And I don't know, it was an experience that like I just settled into, like accepting whatever was going to happen, live or die. But that experience was very pivotal for me in bonding with Michael. It was really cool.
Let's see. Do you want to go on with more viewer questions?
Oh, let me go on to another question from the forums. So hold on. Okay. I'm wondering if you ever find yourself dreaming about a channeling experience, or even actively receiving data from Michael while dreaming, or ever had any frightening, upsetting, scary dreams involving channeling or channeling experiences. This is from Chrissy. I feel like I did, and I think I wrote about it, but I can't remember it. There are times that I get a sense of Michael's presence in my dreams because I have a lot of lucid dreaming where I'm awake in my dreams and I'm fully aware that I'm dreaming. And so I'm sort of me. And so I can feel that connection to Michael, but it's very rare, if at all, that I'm channeling in a dream. I don't feel like there's any necessity for it. And that's why it probably doesn't happen, because while we're in the astral state, I don't think it's necessary for there to be a medium between somebody and Michael or somebody and their guides, because they're already in the same space pretty much. I mean, Michael's not in the same space, but you know what I mean? It's like you don't need channels in the same way you do here. But I'll just say if I have, I don't remember.
Trying to see if I don't think viewer comments have caught up to that particular question, but
all right.
Going back to your previous one about the pink membranes.
Oh.
I'm glad you stayed with us. We love you.
Thank you, bro.
That you didn't leave in 2007. Glad to meet you.
Was that glad to meet me?
I'm assuming Deb means you.
Deb,
Kate,
welcome.
Kate says that I guess your description of that experience with Michael is beautiful. Young says that sounds awesome.
It was weird. I don't know how to describe it. It was just a thing that happened to me. And because it was so perplexing, I didn't really share it with a lot of people. I just knew I had this profound experience that was mine. And however I was seeing it, I feel like was relative to something that I was like in my mind that worked for me at the time. And I just felt like every fragment of the entity was introducing themselves to me, because I had only known Michael as Michael. And in that experience, it was like everybody came to the front to say hi. And it's going to make me cry if I keep talking about it.
Cheryl Varner says, I remember the first time I had a live phone chat with Michael. When the channel brought them online, I fell off the bed I was sitting on.
Oh my God. Speaking of, let me tell you really quickly that before I started channeling Michael or knew that I was channeling Michael, I also had a session over the phone back in the day. And I didn't have my own phone. So I had to go to a payphone at some mall, outdoor mall. And so I was on the phone with Holly Coleman, my channel, and I remember when she brought Michael in, I just got chills just washed over me. It was a very clear and unprovoked sensation that gave me an indication something was different. And I'll never forget, I used to think I was a priest essence when I first started exploring the information. And, because I got a lot to say and I got a lot of opinions. So I was like, thought I was a priest. And then Michael was like, through Holly, was like, well, we probably don't need to tell you your role. You're probably fully aware that you're a sage. And I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Now it's so obvious to you.
I know. That was ridiculous that I ever thought that. Yeah.
Here's a great question from Deb. Troy, do you have any past life memories or many past life?
Deb, I have a few. I hear more about them than I have remembered them. Like a lot of you who might be exploring past lives, you hear about them, but you don't always actively remember them. So, Michael can give us insight into our past lives, but we don't necessarily have those memories come up ourselves. But sometimes when we hear about them, we get this triggered, like, oh, this recognition, and it just feels so moving. So I've had a few of those. The memories that came up for me on their own were mostly traumatic. I had memories of being tortured. I'm laughing, I don't know why, but I had memories of being tortured because I wanted to understand why I was like, if there was back in the day, I wanted to understand why I was being abused, like why I suffered abuse as a child. And back before I understood how karma works and past lives work through Michael, I had this idea that I must have done something to deserve it, because that's the way a lot of people think karma works, and it's, really bad new age stuff. But in looking at my past lives that came up, several of them came up that were linked together that had little snippets of memory of being tortured. And they didn't explain anything about my current life at the abuse I experienced in this life. But those were the memories that came up. Now I know from Michael that past lives don't have an influence on you. They're not the ones who, or, you're not controlled by them. They don't impose themselves on your current life. But the choices you make, the experiences that you stumble into, those can trigger resonance that pulls up a connection to those past lives. And then they become like almost like a circuit that affects each other. And so that's what was happening for me. Because I was experiencing abuse, I was naturally more resonant to the lifetimes where I was also experiencing that. So those were my first past life recalls.
I think Anne's giving you some hugs with these parentheses, but Troy, especially when you're a child, we think it's our fault. Right?
Of course, yeah.
But then she says, isn't your karmic theme torture?
And I don't remember. You might want to look. God damn it. There's Michael has shared with people their karmic theme, because even though we go through all kinds of karma, we also develop themes that we just keep going back to, and some of them are really horrific, of course. And so there's a theme that the peak of your karma was caused by this theme of torture, in my case, maybe.
Jung says, thanks for explaining the connections between this life and past lives.
Oh, yeah. That was a big breakthrough. I always thought that your current life was sort of a result of the past and sort of condemned by the past and really heavily influenced by the past. But it didn't make any sense to me. And then when I started studying with Michael, and Michael explained, like, oh, no, it doesn't work like that. Like, you have this whole bank of experience, and then every life starts off fresh with wherever you are in your evolved consciousness. And you, based on your choices and actions, will stumble upon resonance with the past. And that's how things get resolved. They don't just get pushed on you. So
that would almost be like predestination types of stuff.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense with the micro.
Yeah. Wait, I wanted to say hi to James.
Yeah, I was going to go to James.
Oh, okay.
I've got a system here.
All right. We'll get to you.
I'm trying to stay connected to the things you're talking about in the moment.
Okay.
And to that, a couple of people about sages. I knew I was a sage from the time I read messages from Michael. Of course, Anne.
Well, good for you, Anne. I thought I was a priest.
And Kate, yes, validating being sage felt like a door being swung wide open.
Oh, yeah.
And then about being a priest, Rose says, well, maybe you have had a few grand cycles as a priest.
That is true. I have had those.
So let's circle back up to James. Hello, Troy. Greetings from
James.
the Netherlands. Awake at 2 p.m. Or is it 2 a.m.?
Is it 2 a.m. or 2 p.m.? I think you're 2 a.m.
To listen to you.
Woo!
Good to have you, James.
Thank you for being here.
Here's an interesting question from Brian. Brian, it's good to see you. What does the end of the pandemic look like to you? When will it be over?
For me, it'll be over when the people I trust as my resources tell me that it's safe. I've found my way into a vein of people who are very adamant about the science behind it and the patterns, and they're very balanced and fair in their perspective, and I really trust them. I've grown to trust them because they never just have an opinion. They never just have, like, an idea, a speculation. They go by the science, the patterns, the themes. They're just very educated and have credentials in these fields. And so most of them are saying, yes, things are looking good, but it's not over. At least now keep your mask on, especially if you're going to be indoors. And so I'm just going by the circle of people I found to trust, and I'll go from there. There are a lot of people who are going by the CDC and their recommendations, which is fine and fair, but they're under a lot of pressure politically and economically. So a lot of their decisions aren't geared towards the well-being of everybody in terms of health, but more in terms of economy and politics. So it's a little bit, I don't go by them entirely.
Tyrone, yes, we do have a bunny in the background. That's Bumper.
That's Bumper.
He's eating some Swiss chard right now, so everyone can say hi to Bumper. And was saying, I always remember karmic themes. I think they're hilarious.
Oh, then you must be right. I trust your memory, Anne.
And James, he's correcting himself. Yes, it's 3 a.m. And he also says, being 6th level, is your present life particularly very karmic intensive? If yes, how?
Yes. And I know we just got done talking about how past lives don't influence the current life, and that, but 6th level is unique. 6th level of any soul age is probably the most what's beautifully chaotic lives you can have, because it's not so much that the past lives just impose themselves. It's more like you get to a point as an essence and say, okay, bring it on, let's go and deal with all the stuff we've put off. And so you set up the lifetime more strategically than in other lifetimes, where there might be more creativity involved and more flexibility and more adventure and more romance and more relation, whatever else, all the whole universe of experiences. But 6th level is where you go like, oh God, everything I've been putting off, it's time to go back and take a look at that. So you set up a lot of stuff in 6th level. And Michael said that it's for people who are 6th level on any soul age level will feel like their life is the most out of their hands of any of the soul ages, but also the most protected of all the soul age levels, because there's something really weird about 6th level where it's like if it can go wrong, it goes wrong, but you always land on your feet. Like something always works out magically, almost miraculously. It's strange. So it's almost like you have this built-in safety net. And anybody who's 6th level old will attest to this. There's like this little strange sense of a safety net, while also everything could go to shit in a second.
Case in point, Young says, I'm a 6th level mature. Karma hits me like a truck.
Yes. Because as for me, my 6th levelness shows up mostly with people hating me for no discernible reason. Like out of nowhere, and I have friends who can attest to this, people will just shout horrible things at me or be angry at me or accuse me of stuff that's completely unrelated to anything I ever did or said or was participating in. Or they'll do weird things like just decide not to let me get on the bus, like a public bus transit. That's happened to me before. It's been a while. My 6th level stuff has leveled off quite a bit. It's plateaued. So, but early in my life, it was crazy.
Mike says, 6th level old shit show here. I definitely relate to the 6th level old safety net.
Yeah.
Let's see. I wanted to go back regarding the question of how you answered the question about the pandemic. Tyrone says, keep your mask on. Thank you.
Right.
Anne says, regarding the pandemic, the same. For those of us who live in population-dense areas, we have to be careful.
Yes.
And then Rose said, I doubt the end of the pandemic is a quick fix with a clear before and after, but a gradual process of merging and adapting into a new reality.
Yep. Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, and then Amanda, about figuring out what role you are. She says, I thought I was a scholar. 2 of my task companions are scholars, so maybe that's part of it.
Oh, you know what? Are you a sage? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Amanda's
right. I always forget people's roles. Sages always tend to think they're priests or scholars. We're very similar in a lot of ways, because sages love to learn, and so we often think of ourselves as scholars, but we also love to tell people stuff, so we think of ourselves as priests.
Really love.
Yes.
Like really.
But the
really
difference
love.
between a sage and a priest, well, I can tell you, the difference between a sage and a priest is that a sage will teach you something or share something with you, and then just leave it to you to figure out what to do with it, or let you do what you want to with it. Priests, on the other hand, will follow up and be like, did you do it? Did you do it? Why didn't you do it? Have you followed? So priests really like to follow up a lot of times. And scholars, although they love to learn and stuff, they'll just talk to you whether you want to hear about it or not. Sages tend to be more careful about who they're talking to because they want you to be able to hear them. And so scholars don't care.
Or if you're a double whammy, a scholar cast sage, like Anne, you really love to talk to people.
There you go.
Rose says, priests are always right.
Michael has said that that's uncomfortably true.
And then Mike, not the same
we
Mike
can't all be scholars.
Troy was talking about, but this Mike says we can't all be scholars. I'm not a scholar, but I do have a lot of scholar in my overleaves, that's for sure. Let's see, I wanted to go back up to a question from Cheryl here. What was your first experience with live channeling? And who was Polly? Did you mention someone named Polly earlier?
No. Who's Polly?
I'm not sure who Polly is. Or who was the person that you said first earlier? You were talking about the person who first channeled for you or told you.
Oh, Holly.
Holly.
Coleman.
That's what it was. Holly.
She doesn't channel anymore, but at the time she was part of the Michael Educational Foundation way back in the day. What was the question I was responding to?
Your first experience with like live channeling.
Oh, my first time with live channeling was in North Carolina with my boyfriend at the time, my task companion, and a couple of friends. And I sat down, and when I started bringing in Michael's energy, my body started shaking and I started sweating really bad. And I went into a deep panic, and I couldn't do it. So I had to break out of, I don't know where I went, but I went into some sort of trance. But because I was having such a physical reaction to it, I couldn't hold the trance. So I had to come out of it. And Holly was working with me at the time, helping me as a mentor for channeling. And she, Michael through her said, oh, well, that's because when we pop into your, they don't pop into my body, but when I'm trying to channel, it engages all of your centers. And so it's triggering my instinctive center. And my instinctive center was carrying memories of a lifetime where I apparently was like, hey, everybody, jump in and out of my body. If you don't have a body, I'll share mine. And so I had all these infant souls jumping in and out of my body, apparently, like just going like, because infant souls love to be like in a body. And so if they're just wandering around and somebody lets them, they'll just pop in and like merge with you. Well, I was doing that, I guess, during the medieval times. I was letting these infant souls jump in and out of my body, and people thought I was crazy. And so they put me out of my misery by killing me. And so according to Michael, I had to work through those instinctive memories that equated channeling with dying. And so once I had that information, it was really easy to work with, and I was able to do it. But that was my first experience in going into live channeling.
So let's catch up. There's a lot of fun, sometimes sassy conversation happening about
I
the
love
different
sassy.
roles. So Young Ying says, I am a scholar with sage casting. I always get along well with sages. Tyrone says, hey, priest cast here. I live in a daily state of sass.
All right, Tyrone.
James is saying, apparently sages have pink hair, but priests never.
I don't know about that, but that's funny.
And regarding Ro's earlier comment, I think about priests are always right. I think this is what Christian's referring to. Warriors would beg to differ, Ro.
That's funny.
And said, scholars they're saying, put a quarter in the slot, they'll tell you all.
Oh, that's true. You don't even have to put a quarter.
Kind of like those magic genie machines, like that tell you your fortune.
No, and you got to be careful, because if you're going to do the quarter, they're going to tell you all about the quarter first before you get the information.
Well, Mike says, LOL, and I provide the quarters.
I love it. I love all of you.
I'm not sure what this is referencing, but I guess she's going back and she's bantering back and forth with Christian. See, even king, warrior, entity Michael kneels before priests.
Oh.
That's right, because I guess the part of Michael that we all are interacting with, right, is from the king warrior.
They're all king warriors. That's the whole
king warriors. Tyrone says, I'm poly. Poly roles, I guess.
No, polyamorous.
Oh, polyamorous?
I think so.
Oh, I didn't know we were talking about amorous. Let's see.
Or maybe poly rolled.
That's what I thought. That's what I said.
Maybe. Oh, sorry. Maybe that's right. It's true
see.
from my...
Rue says, good old instinctive center.
Oh, yeah.
Cheryl says, that's amazing, Troy. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right.
Okay.
We did have a question.
Warriors rule. You have a question?
Yeah, here's an interesting question from Kate, Troy, do you have any advice on handling 6th level old karma being a sage?
Well, I guess what I would say is trust that that you have, because if you're 6th level, you probably know what I'm talking about with this sense of a safety net. There's sense of like, you're going to get through. It sometimes doesn't even feel like you will, but like there's a part of you just knows. And so I first would say trust that trust, because if you've trust is based on experience, and once you've gone through something the first time, then you have credentials for trusting yourself, because trust isn't like blind faith where it's like you've never experienced it before, but you're just gonna blindly have faith in something or yourself. But once you've had experience, then your trust is grounded. It's confidence, and you can trust that you'll do it again. At least have the feeling of trust. And so trust the trust, and make sure that you always have people around you who are I don't know, just have people around you who foster your creativity, because I think sages and artisans, the expressive roles especially, really need to have people around them to receive their art, their expression. And when you have that circuit happening for you with people around you, then whatever happens to you, you always feel safe, because the people you can trust along with yourself.
I'm not sure if this is a question that you can answer, but James was asking, how does 6th level mature compare to 6th level old in intensity?
Oh, 6th level mature is way more intense. 6th level old is almost comically absurd in its karmic dance. It's ridiculous. Like, a lot of it doesn't even make sense. But 6th level mature will tend to have story arcs. Like, really, the karma is clear from beginning to resolution. And so there's a lot of intensity, and sometimes it's even long-term karma. But like, imagine the difference between somebody who's on a road trip and stopping regularly to deal with issues with their car versus that's 6th level mature. 6th level old is like somebody driving but their window's broken, so they're just constantly like getting hit in the face with bugs. That's the difference, I feel like we feel like we're still going somewhere, but damn it, the fucking bugs keep hitting us in the eyes.
Oh, Tyrone, I'm sorry, I was being too literal earlier. So the Polly thing, it was a word play from earlier when somebody was asking who's
That's
Polly.
Cute.
Sorry,
I get it.
I didn't get that. Yes, Tyrone was sassing in a good
there's
way.
The sass again.
Yeah. All right.
Let me get another of the panel of the forum questions done.
Sure thing.
Let's see, what do we have here? I understand that Michael have to sort through an unimaginable amount of connections to find the intended one. I, however, don't understand how that is impacting you. The bigger part of this question was about when somebody asks questions that require Michael to access the Akashic records, instead of just drawing from whatever is experienced in me or something more accessible from themselves. Like, if you're asking about your past lives, or a connection between you and someone else on an essence level, they have to go to the Akashic records for that. That's good, because that's what they're learning. That's their whole thing on the causal plane, is that they're learning how to read the Akashic records. So all of your questions are relevant. But when they have to go to the Akashic records, not only there's no time experience where Michael is, but the experience on our end is sometimes sitting and waiting for the information. And the amount of focus that's required for me to hold that space while they're looking for information, that's the only way I can describe it, is more intensive than somebody asking, about something that's maybe just their teaching or information from them and their perspective. When they have to go to the records, it's a different focus for me. So this question is about that. How is it impacting me differently? And I think that the answer to that is just the difference in the focus. Because when Michael is interacting with people and they're being asked questions that they can answer relatively quickly and because of their own bank of knowledge, then it just flows. It just flows really fast and easy. But when they have to go look something up, I can't just break trance and wait for them to get back to me. I have to hold the space. That's the best way I could describe it. Hold the space differently while that information is coming. And then because of the way that information comes from the Akashic Records, it's like a weird, I don't know how to describe it. It's more like a data pack that gets sort of like downloaded, and then it has to be unpacked and made sense of. And all this happens really fast and seamlessly, but it's slower than normal conversation. But yeah, it has an impact on me differently just because of the difference in focus that's required. Yep. I miss her. I miss Pat. All right.
Is that?
Yep.
Going back to your previous question about 6th level mature versus 6th level old, Young, who is 6th level mature, she said 6th level mature does not know the experience of 6th level old yet. I can only imagine lives will get better.
A little bit.
And then Kate says, thank you, that's helpful. Michael revealed I'll be transitioning to 6th level around my 30th birthday. So that is good food for thought.
Get your visor on. Because you're going to start getting the bugs. They're going to start getting in your teeth, in your hair. You're going to be on an acceleration Akashic zip files.
He's talking about Akashic zip files.
It is. Yeah. Hey, there's so many things that are like metaphors for channeling that are the way we interact with things digitally, and that plays into what Michael says, like the internet is basically the astral plane, like manifest. Like everything in the physical plane is an extension of the astral plane in a lot of ways. And so when information is being downloaded, it's very similar to actual downloading.
Here's an interesting one from James. Has there ever been a head of state or a president who has a transcendental soul in modern times or ancient times? I understand Pope John the 23rd was a transcendental soul.
I don't know about Pope John 23rd off the top of my head, but I don't think anybody has been in any positions of power or authority as a, what was it, transcendental?
Mm-hmm.
Transcendental. They might get into those positions through popularity, but I don't think they start there or work their way there, at least in the past. They're usually some citizen or some part of a society that's more in a position to be heard by people who need to hear them. And a lot of times, positions of power and authority aren't appealing to more, I don't know what the right word was, more enlightened souls.
Yeah, Young is saying Gandhi, but Gandhi never held a political position, like an official leadership position, right?
I don't think so. He wasn't a head of state or a president, no.
Here's another one. Deb asks, does Michael ever intrude even when you are not channeling purposely, like to tell you something important?
No, not like that. That's a very good question. But I have guides who do. And it's been a while since I've been receptive to that. But I used to have guides who would make commentary on, like, if I were interested in somebody and started dating them, my guides would comment like friends would, and say like either mock the person or like point out something that I missed. And one of my favorite instances was when I was dating somebody who was sort of skeptical of my channeling and work with all this stuff. And so my guide said, ask him about the Roman soldier under his bed. And so I didn't know what that meant, but I was like, well, because he wanted proof of my contact with these non-physical presences. So I said, well, my guide's saying, what about, tell me about the Roman soldier under your bed. And he went like ghostly white and was like super shocked. And he was like, oh my God. And it turns out he had like a stash of porn magazines under his bed that were full of like Roman soldiers. And I'd never been to his apartment. And he had a special fetish for them. No, Michael never interjects or interrupts. But they're always there in a way that I can say, like, I can tune in, I can listen, but I have to actively do
it. Going back to Gandhi, and was saying Gandhi didn't hold political power, just moral power.
Oh.
And Tyrone said, yeah, so was Muhammad, who wrote the Quran, if he remembers correctly. And then Christian says, it would seem to be against what a transcendental soul is supposed to do, to be in power.
Well, especially over the past 2,000 years or however long, positions of power and authority have been taken over by young souls. And so those positions have been defined by young souls. And so a lot of mature and old and transcendental are like, we don't want those positions because of all that comes with it, all the junk that comes built into those positions. And even if they could do work from those positions, there is a lot to work through to be effective. And so now things are shifting and more mature souls are taking positions of power and authority and changing the definitions of what it means to be a leader. And so we might find ourselves with an infinite soul, transcendental soul in positions of power and authority, because it would be completely defined differently in a mature soul paradigm.
Springing off your comments about your personal guides, so are you closer to your personal guides or Michael? How does that work?
I haven't really had dialogue with my personal guides for a long time. They were really instrumental in my work with Michael, though. Before I could really sit with Michael for very long or hold a conversation, my guides acted as a bridge for that and would help me a lot. And then over the years, I just basically lost focus on my guides, so I don't really pay attention to them very much. Now I'm feeling bad saying that. So I guess I'm closer to Michael right now. Yeah, Michael is a really, like, just an old ancient friend now.
And didn't you say it was one of your earlier guides who sort of led you to Michael and
yes.
said, like, well, you've kind of learned everything from me that you can. It's time that you...
Yes. I was working... Some of you know this story, but how I met Michael was that I was curious. I had always had contact with non-physical presences or ghosts or whatever, spirits. But then I found out that there were people who focused and could like actually have like conversations. So I was practicing that. But eventually, long story short, I learned how to open up to a guide. And so I started keeping a journal, and I kept a journal for 2 years, asking questions, getting all kinds of information. And all this information was talking about kings and priests and warriors and old souls and young souls and fifth levels and sixth levels and all these things, and I had no context for them at the time because I'd never heard of Michael at the time. And so I thought it all had to do with numerology. I was trying to translate soul age to mean something. I thought kings were literal. I thought like, oh, a king. Oh, they had a past life as a king. I didn't know it was describing all these roles. So eventually, after 2 years of working with my guide said, you're opening up to a larger source of information. I'm going to be leaving to make that, or leaving focus for you so you can open up to that. And I'll tell that story another time, but basically then that's when I discovered Michael, and that's when I realized that everything I had been being given to me from my guide was all preparation for, and it had all the terminology of the Michael teachings. That was my validation for this larger source of information.
So sticking on the topic of guides, Michael asks, are there any exercises you can recommend that would allow one to listen better to their guides or their essence?
I think that probably the best thing you can do is make it on your terms. That's what I did. I didn't know how to listen. You know, when we were talking earlier about how we can share the Michael teachings with others as long as we learn like a language that we can talk to a person about it, and we don't have to tell them all about the Michael teachings. We don't have to tell them all the history, but we can share with them insights because we can speak to them in a language they can hear. And so I think that applies when you're working with guides too. Sometimes your guides will try to get information across to you, but you can't hear it or you don't notice it. So what I did was say, I need the communication to be here. So I asked for a lot of communication to happen in dreams. And so I would get a lot of information there, or I would sit down specifically and say, I'm ready to communicate and listen. And then I would just listen for this little bubbling of information that would start dripping, I guess you could say, and just start writing. And the key is to judge it after you're done. Don't try to question it and analyze it while you're doing it, but designate that time. Say, I'm here, I'm listening, and then write down what comes in response to your question or to your inviting insight about something, and get it all out and then look at it and judge it. So I guess that's my advice, is that you need to define your communication on your terms and designate the time for it so that you can learn better what you're listening for.
Ro had an interesting response. Dreams, journaling, intuitive art. I love those.
Yeah.
She also said, I see it like a sound wave emitting ripples across sand or water. I think this is in reference to
power.
I don't think it's about power. I think this is when you were talking about the channeling in your guides and your relationship to your guides. Here's a sort of a logistics question. Are we recording it and will it be shared with TLE?
Yes, this will be posted to the channel. Thank you. Was that Cheryl?
Yeah, that was Cheryl.
This is a good time to mention, if you are enjoying yourself, please please subscribe to the channel, because you will be alerted, and click the notification bell so that you'll be alerted to any future events. Gotta do that.
Christian, we definitely would never shame you for joining late.
No.
But have you talked about the physical effects of channeling?
Well, no, I haven't. So if you're asking about the downside of channeling and the side effects from channeling, Michael has talked about the dangers of channeling in the sense that there's a high proportion of strokes, aneurysms, related to channeling, some memory loss, as I try to remember. Because of the dynamic that's involved with your body and channeling, there are certain effects, and there are ways to mitigate it by being responsible with how much time you're spending in trance, and not pushing yourself too much. But those physical effects are the downside. And I think they might be because, for me, the difference between channeling and like doing psychic work is that psychic work drains me, like reading tarot cards or giving intuitive guidance. Those things drain me because all that's coming from me. So you kind of stop when you're drained. You don't really push too much further past that because you can't. But when you're channeling, it's like you're like water that's being carbonated. And so it's like these bubbles just fill you up and you get really energized. At least I do. I get really energized and full of like carbonation, and there's a pressure that builds, and I can continue. I can push it, and you can push it too far. And I think that that's where the danger comes in. So now I've learned to like not do more than a certain amount of hours a day of channeling to keep that carbonation from becoming a pressure, because I don't want to have a stroke.
And I will say, Christian, observing when Troy live channels, when he's done, he often, he's sort of in a sleepy, groggy state. He might be yawning a lot in the immediate moments afterwards. So it does seem like he has been gone for a while. And then when he wakes up from the channeling, like he's sort of getting reintroduced or reacclimated to his body in those first few minutes after he's channeled.
But I also have a wave of hyperactivity after.
Yes, that is phase 2. And then he, like the sage that remembers he's a child of the universe and he wants to play, he gets all hyperactive. But Tyrone says it's like athletes having high injury rates.
Right. I guess so, yeah. I mean, I was
going to say, we're all caught up in the chat, though. If you had any other
I do.
questions
Let's see.
from the...
Is there any way of structuring questions that can make your work easier? Or any way of posing questions that you'd prefer? Another question from Pat. I think this was a question that was, the context was, when we ask questions of Michael, how much backstory do we give? How much detail do we give? I think this is what this question is referring to. Because sometimes there's a lot of explanation that goes into a question so that there's a more rapid response, because the more information, the faster it is for Michael to process or to work through me, because then the information's there, or at least your perspective of it. When you just ask a vague question, then it can take a long time for the response, because Michael's then sorting through all the energy and trying to figure out what you're trying to ask. So I guess my answer to this question is to give as much information as you think is necessary, that you don't, and to be as clear as you can be about with the question. That's really the best way to do it. Like, it's okay to provide information. That's better than not providing it. As far as like the flow of things. And then just be as concise as possible in your question. Michael says that there's an art to channeling, but there's also an art to questioning, and that all of the students are learning how better to ask questions. So this is definitely something that we're all learning as we go.
Because a question that's like just too open-ended might garner a response that's too open-ended, right? That can't be applicable to the individual per se.
Yeah, like, let me give you an example. So some people will ask questions like, tell me about my agreements with so-and-so. That may sound like a simple question, but that's a huge question, because there are all these different tiers of agreements. There's all these different categories of agreements. And there's a lot of agreements that happen with a person especially if you're having interaction with them, then you're having agreements left and right and negotiating them. So when someone says, tell me about my agreements with so-and-so, that's like a lot to sort through. And then Michael has to prioritize and then give you what, like a theme, so that it sort of gives you a better answer than no answer. Because if they were to actually answer your question, it could be like hundreds of agreements. So it's better to say, like, I'm having this experience with this person. Is this related to an agreement? Because then you've like funneled the question towards, you're correlating it with something, so you can have insight into what you're experiencing, instead of just having this array of agreements to describe, for Michael to describe, and a lot of them you may not even be aware of or have any relevance. Did that make sense?
I think so, totally. Rose says, I've noticed that the most profound answers come from personal and vulnerable sharings.
That's very true. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. I can't read it from here. Let's see. Does the channeled entity give all available information when answering questions? Or if the essence is not ready to know or understand the answers, will then the entity hold back answers, not give all that it knows? That's a really good question. Because there's some assumption that Michael won't tell you what you aren't ready to know. Or, a lot of psychics or new agey beliefs say that. Like, their responsibility is not to give you too much information that you're not ready for. I don't find Michael to do that at all. They will tell you what you've asked. They only respond to the questions you ask. So if you've asked a question, they're going to give you an answer or give you a response. And so there's never really any danger of them holding back information that you aren't ready for. I think they've even explicitly said they don't make that determination. If the information's there, if they can access it, then you're ready for it. And because this is the same information your essence could get, but as your teacher, your agreements with Michael as a teacher, they'll relay that information to you, but they can't deliver anything that you're not ready for already. There have been times, however, where Michael will give information deliberately inaccurately to prompt not as deceit, but as a part of an agreement to prompt a person to question. And that's part of the teaching too, because a lot of people will come to the teaching and feel like, it's channeled, so therefore it must be right. And so Michael will sometimes slip in stuff that's there for you to be like, wait, something's not right. And all channeling has built-in inaccuracies to keep us on our toes, but sometimes it's actually deliberate. And where I found this happen the most is with kings, because a lot of kings aren't channeled as being kings. They're channeled as a different role, and then the king essence usually just goes, no, wait, I'm a king. And Michael's explained that a lot of kings have to do that. That's like a thing that they do, where they have to claim their kingness on their own, because that makes it much more grounded in them, and that's their path of validation. If they're just told they're a king, there's something that doesn't work. It doesn't work for them. So that's a little tidbit there.
Okay, yeah. And Rose says, yes, self-validation is important.
Yes, it is. Well, if there are no more questions, we're going to wrap up soon. We've been in here a while. I didn't expect us to be here this long. I thought it would be like stretched for an hour.
Of course. I was wondering if Karen was there lurking. Of course, the king pops up. Sigh.
What was that?
Because you were just saying how kings don't like to be told they're kings. They have to discover it and validate it for themselves.
That's true.
So,
Wait, Karen, as a king, do you find that to be true too? It's hard to be a king.
Poor kings. It's hard to be a king. While Karen is
love me the kings. Me too.
While Karen is formulating a response to that, here's something fun, spontaneous. Name 3 favorite things.
Name 3 favorite things? Let's see. I love metaphorical horror. These are just random. I love horror films that are metaphorical, that are like stories that aren't just about what you're seeing, but telling a story of a human process, like of, like a universal experience. And some examples are a film called Relic, which is a film about processing the experience of dementia and losing our sense of self and memory and what defines us. It's beautiful. It's called Relic, and it's not the one that takes place in the pyramids. It's the other one with the family. Hereditary is a good one. That's all about grief. I love films like It Follows, which is all about it's a play on our fear of sex and contagion, and also just love in general. It's very cool.
Midsummer's another great one about grief and the grieving
yes,
process.
Midsummer's good. I have a whole list of films I could name. 3 favorite things. Another thing is I love music, and music that particularly sounds like grown-up lullabies. Anything that sounds like grown-up lullabies, like lullabies for grown-up kids, I love.
That is such a good way to describe it.
There's a band called Purity Ring that has an unfortunate name association with Christianity, but that's not what it is. But it's a band called Purity Ring, and I love their music. There's so much lullaby-ness about it, as well as Cocteau Twins, which I love. Yes, Cocteau Twins. And one more thing. I love when people are willing to give a chance to something that would otherwise be deemed an inconvenience. That sends my soul into such an ecstasy when someone says, like, they might be resistant, they might not be familiar, they might not even want to try it, like being vegan, for instance, and they may have to work through all of the stereotypes and all the bullshit around it and all the negativity. And then they say, you know what, can I learn more about this? I love that so much when people give things a chance that are helpful for others. The same thing for people who are like, I'm not racist. And then instead of saying that, they say, how am I racist? Like, what are my blind spots to being racist? That, I think, is so beautiful when people are willing to see what they can do better, and how to be better together. Those are my 3 things that I love.
And that third one is something that I did when I first met you, right? When we first started dating, and that was not through any pressure from you whatsoever, but just you were vegetarian at the time. I was not vegetarian or vegan, but I knew from our very first night of meeting each other and talking, I knew how important that was to you. And it was something that I had always questioned for myself throughout the years growing up in adulthood. And I realized that might be one of the fastest windows into understanding and learning who you are, if I were to explore that for myself. And I remember right then and there, like after our first date, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be vegetarian. It's something I've thought about. Why not embrace it now? And I did. And then, we went on that journey. You had been vegetarian for decades, but, we went on that journey together. And then we both also evolved to veganism. So
yeah,
I definitely think it's when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to push yourself past your comfort zones and convenience zones, it definitely allows you to learn more about yourself and more about other people.
Yeah, that's a great example.
A lot of purity ring love in the house. And then Tyrone saying, when you were describing your metaphorical horror movies, Brittany is resonating hard with all of your movie choices.
Oh, nice.
So, and Karen has gotten back to us about being king. She says, oh yeah, you would never have convinced me, but I own it now. Can't believe how I never saw it.
Right? It's really beautiful. I think it was actually through you, Karen, that I noticed the reality of that pattern among almost every king I had come across, and every king since too. It's such an interesting thing. And then I finally asked Michael about it, and that's where I got that information. It's like, well, kings like to figure it out on their own.
Ollivander asks, Troy, what's your favorite snack?
Bobby.
Okay, I don't think he meant me. I think you meant me. Oh. I thought you meant you wanted me to answer because I was going to know the answer.
No, you're my favorite snack.
Because I was ready with an answer.
No, my favorite snack. I love French fries.
I was going to say anything potato.
With any kind of potato. It doesn't matter.
Potato chips.
Potato
French
chips.
Fries.
I like potatoes. I like potatoes. Right. I ain't gonna lie.
Apparently, everyone thinks you're a comedian. Apparently.
Yeah, baby. All right, we should wrap this up because you know what? I've got to exercise tonight, and I'm going to go into VR with friends and do some dance moves so I can get some my body moving. Because I gotta fix some health issues that I have.
You've got a standing ovation from Brittany for that snack answer. And Christian said, my snack is my spouse.
Right,
too.
Christian? High five.
Hashtag my snack, my spouse.
That's nice. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out today. And if you really like this, please post to Facebook or wherever you see this posted in the future and let me know if this is something you'd like to do again. I really enjoyed it, and I think we can cover a lot of territory together that's different from what we do in the more formal Michael Speaks and channeling events. So this was really cool. Thank you all.
And it's great for them to learn about who you are, Troy, as just a regular old person and not just as a channel within the community.
Well, that's why I wanted to do this too, because I want to spend time with you as me, because I miss you. I miss out a lot. I see people talking, like having these conversations about all this channeling that comes through me, but I don't know anything about it.
Lots of love being shared.
Aww. I enjoy it too. Oh, good. All right. Well, this was a randomly scheduled one, but I'll see if I can do one, maybe one a month. Wait, what was that one? I missed that one, Bobby.
Oh, Anne says, love it. Thank you so much, Troy and Bobby. You are such delights. Miss you, Anne.
Thanks for spending your Friday night doing this with me, or your Saturday morning for some of you. Very nice of you to show up, James. I don't know if you're still here, but thank you.
Enjoy the VR dancing. Thank you guys. It was super fun. Oh, James is still here. He says, I can go to sleep now.
Oh, nice. I'm glad you showed up. I know you were
Faye sends virtual hugs.
You're in a different time zone, so it would be a challenge. Kisses. Thanks.
Love.
All right, bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Wrap up now. Bye.
Bye.
Let me see if I can do this.